in my health meter, and I didn't want to use an energy tank yet, and I'm not going to unless, you know, I'd rather die and restart than use an energy tank at this point. Come on, one more shot, and there we go. He's taken care of. I will actually have to refight him in Wily's castle, because you have to refight all the Robot Masters in Wily's castle, so when I get to that part, I should be able to get him more in the pattern, because in that time I was just kind of more concentrating on killing him, and I wasn't being careful enough to get him stuck in that pattern I mentioned that would have taken him out a lot easier. But by defeating him, we get Crash Bomber. We have a weird tan color that Mega Man turns into, and now I'm going to head to Bubbleman stage, which is a water-based level, as you would expect it to be. And with it being a water-based level, you're going to have those weird water physics that happened in many video games over the years, where you have that extra super slow jump that takes you much higher than a normal jump, and you have to work around that so that you don't jump too high and end up landing in spikes that are instant death, or, you know, trying to jump over certain enemies and, you know, they end up rising up into you because you couldn't jump fast enough over them. A series of easily to maneuver around platforms, and now we're going to head down and watch out for these shell guys. I'm going to jump over them here and then work down. Now we're actually going to crash into the water, so now the physics will begin, and then when we come down here we're going to see more of those shell guys. That time I'll shoot a shell off and jump over them. And now we're starting to get into like the main, you know, the main course of Bubbleman stage here. We have these spikes at the top of the level. And now we have to do battle with the first of these giant fish robots that shoot at the little shrimp. And of course their only weak spot is the little blinking thing on the top of their head, so jump and shoot it when you can. I basically just rather take the shots from the shrimp half the time, because the shrimp really don't do too much damage. And after you kill the fish, if you want to kill the shrimp after that, you actually can get sometimes not just small health boost, but sometimes the larger health boost from killing numbers of those shrimp. So if you took a lot of damage for some reason, hopefully you will get lucky and the shrimp will drop a large health item, which of course would be very useful all the time. Here's the second of the giant fish, and shooting the top of him there as it blinks, as I'm taking damage, like I said, from the shrimp. He's taken care of. Now jump up here, making sure that I don't collide with the spikes, as now I have a couple of the frogs to deal with. As long as the little tiny frogs are still jumping around, and since they're underwater they move slower, the big frog won't shoot any more of the frogs out. As you can see, since that one frog was there, he wasn't shooting any more frogs, as I just gained a large health boost from the little frog. So you can use that to a little bit of your advantage. It's just better to focus on the big frog than taking out the little tiny frogs. As I'm working over, watch out for these crabs. And now we're going to enter the layer of Bubbleman, which is an entire battle underwater, so you have to get used to those physics and stuff. Okay, you can see the spikes are on the ceiling, so you must be careful. And now, at the start, Bubbleman usually charges right at you, doing a slow maneuvering jump, firing randomly. When he lands on the ground, he'll do one of two things. If you're also on the ground with him, he'll fire those direct bullet shots at you and then jump up. Usually I find that sometimes more so that if I'm already in the air when he lands, he'll focus more on shooting the bubbles than jumping. But I've had a very hard time, because sometimes he will just completely be absolutely random. And I just comes down to firing more shots at him, because he's not really that difficult, and usually if you have a good amount of health going to the battle, he'll die way before you do. But as far as strategy goes, if he's at a direct line of sight with you, he fires that direct bullet almost every time. Usually if he's not seeing you, he'll focus more on shooting the bubbles. But now we actually get pretty much the most important weapon in the game, the Bubble Lead, because we are going to be needing that in order to beat the very, very final boss of the game. If you don't even have Bubble Lead against that final boss, if you ran out of it, you're pretty much out of luck, because it's the only weapon that will hurt the final boss of the game. And this is really one of those things in Mega Man games that became kind of either a running joke or a common theme, where it'd be a certain item or a certain weapon would be used to defeat one of the bosses of the game, and it being the only real weakness to that final boss. As I am now in Metalman stage, and throughout this stage is conveyor belts, constantly conveyor belts. as well as, of course, these, crushers that fall from the ceiling. They're not an instant death, thankfully, even though they are spike-laced, and usually anything with spikes is an instant kill to Mega Man. They aren't an instant kill. And now we have the introduction, really, of these drills that they're always throughout Mega Man games, even into the X series, of the drills that fill up certain small hallways, constant drills. They are good, though, if you want to boost up your health. If you got hit by one or two of them, usually they do drop large and small health items, as well as item boosts in case you used your items up to be able to boost them right back up. And now we have the court gestures that are kind of running the random gears that are throughout this level, as I accidentally ran backwards. So you respawn, unfortunately. A problem that's in most NES video games is respawn. In case you go off the screen slightly and then come back, that enemy will respawn. Now I'm going to be chased by him for a few seconds to try to get over here. As you can see, some slowdown. It doesn't really happen too much in Mega Man games, but if you have enough enemies on screen, the game will slow down. But that's a common problem that happens throughout most of the NES era and into SNES era, and even somewhat still today, though if it does happen in a video game today, it's conceived as almost, unacceptable. It just shouldn't be allowed, and a game gets a lot of negative scores if they had that slowdown. But back then, it really didn't matter if the game had a little bit of slowdown in it, even a lot of slowdown in some cases with certain games, because it was just a common problem. But here we go with Metalman, and he throws razor-sharp gears at us. Or they could be conceived as giant blades. Either way, he's throwing them at us, and he's going to stay on that right side of the screen, and you have to deal with two things. Not only him throwing the blades at you, but also the conveyor belt on the bottom. And the conveyor belt will switch directions, pulling you towards him sometimes and pushing you away from him other times. You'll see a little bit of a flash that will go off right before the conveyor belt changes. And my goal for this is to focus mainly on staying close to the left wall and firing at him when possible. Just constant firing, not even really caring where the bullets are going, not really aiming, but just keep firing bullets and really focus on just jumping over the metal blades that are coming at me. But he's taken care of, and I get equipped with... what a shock! I get equipped with the metal blade, as we turn like a weird rust color. And now I'm going to head off to Airman Sage, who on the easy difficulty is, well, extremely easy, because the patterns of his weapon are much easier to dodge. On the harder difficulty, or on the normal difficulty, whatever you want to call it, to be able to dodge the patterns that Airman will use against me becomes a lot more challenging, and some of them are impossible to be able to dodge. So you just have to take the hit half the time. I always, if you're doing this on this difficult setting, bring some energy tanks into the battle, if possible, against Airman, because you may need one, at least one during it, depending upon the patterns that he's going to use against you, which is completely random, it seems like, every time. Now, I really like Airman Stage. I like the cloud level and all that, and more, of course, great music, and I just really like some of the enemy bases. Capcom was really good at certain levels being based, of course, this is Airman Stage, so they do a really good job of making it, of course, based around clouds. Then again, you have some stages that they would do in later Mega Man games especially that had absolutely seemingly nothing to do with the Robot Master that would be at the end of the level, but at least especially during this game, they did a very good job at creating the stages, and it's one of the cooler things about the Mega Man series. Now here's more of these weird drill cloud-based creatures that show up and spawn the little guys out. I just highly suggest jumping on them, take the little damage that you're going to take from them, and just keep going instead of just waiting. Because it's really just going to take more time than it's necessary to be able to maneuver your way around. And the random birds that drop the eggs, which are one of the most annoying enemies in all of Mega Man, if you do shoot them, and kill a lot of them, most of the time they drop a big health boost. Not all the time, but a lot of the time they will drop a big health boost, or at least a few of the little tiny health boosts, so that even a little bit of damage you would have taken from those drills, those horn guys, you'll gain it right back. Now here we go with Airman Sage, and he fires a random pattern of little mini tornadoes at you. And the suggestion for it is take the damage when you can't seemingly dodge around it. Like this one I can dodge around. He's gonna fire 3 of them and then come towards you. When he does that, stay as close as you can to him and just keep firing. He takes a lot of damage from the Mega Buster. As you can see right there, even though I was almost low on health and I may have almost needed to use an energy tank, you can see just how easily, if you just get up close to him and start firing him, how much damage your Mega Buster will do against him. But by defeating Airman, of course we're going to get his air shooter, which basically is going to shoot 3 little mini tornadoes out of the gun. But also by defeating Airman, we get another one of the Dr. Light items. For defeating Airman, we get item number 2, the Beta Rush Jet, which I mentioned. The item number 1, the final item we'll get, is actually from Heatman Stage, which I actually will be doing last. And I'll be using Beta Rush Jet during the course of that level. As you can see, I'm equipped with item number 2, taking it a little bit of time. And now we're going to head to Woodman Stage, the 7th of the Robot Masters. So here we go with